My daughter is only 8. She's blind, but she loves listening to the wind in the trees and feeling the warm sunlight on her face. That afternoon, she was standing quietly in our front yard, holding her little white cane and tracing the bark of our big oak tree with her fingers. Then Karen, our angry HOA president in her bright red outfit, stormed across the lawn shouting, "You can't let your kid touch my trees! This is HOA property!" My daughter stepped back, confused. I'm sorry. I didn't know," she whispered softly, but Karen didn't listen. She grabbed the rope that was lying near the garden tools, marched toward my daughter, and tied her gently but tightly to the tree trunk. "There. Maybe now you'll stay out of trouble," Karen snapped, walking away like she'd done something heroic. My daughter's voice shook as she called out, "Dad, help, I can't move." Karen smirked, not realizing the truth. The little girl she had just tied to a tree was the police chief's daughter. My daughter is only 8. She's blind, but she loves listening to the wind in the trees and feeling the warm sunlight on her face. That afternoon, she was standing quietly in our front yard, holding her little white cane and tracing the rough bark of our big oak tree with her fingertips. The same tree she always said sounds like home when the leaves rustle. Then Karen, our angry HOA president in her bright red outfit, stormed across the lawn shouting, "You can't let your kid touch my trees! This is HOA property!" My daughter stepped back, confused. I'm sorry. I didn't know," she whispered softly, her voice small and fragile. But Karen didn't listen. She grabbed a rope lying near our garden tools, marched straight to my daughter and tied it around her, not hurting her, but tight enough that she couldn't move away from the tree trunk. "There," Karen snapped. "Maybe now you'll stay out of trouble." My little girl's voice shook as she called out, "Dad, help, I can't move." Karen had no idea the child she had just tied to a tree was the police chief's daughter, and I was already running toward her. The second I heard her voice, that terrified, trembling "Dad, help," something inside me snapped. My heart dropped to my stomach, and every muscle in my legs fired at once. I sprinted across the yard faster than I ever had in my life. My daughter stood there, small and helpless, her fingers clutching the rope as if trying to understand what was happening. She wasn't in pain, but she was terrified. Her blind eyes were wide, searching the air for me, trying to identify every sound. "Dad, are you here?" she whispered shakily. "I'm right here," I said, kneeling beside her instantly. "I'm right here, sweetheart." I gently untied the rope, keeping one arm around her so she wouldn't feel the sudden emptiness or lose her balance. The rope slid off her waist, and she clung to my shirt with both hands, tight, scared, needing reassurance that this moment was ending. Karen stood only a few feet away, hands on her hips, looking proud of what she'd done. "You should thank me," she said sharply. "Kids need discipline when they break rules. You clearly don't teach her boundaries." I stood up slowly, placing myself between Karen and my daughter, who held on to the back of my leg and pressed her forehead against me, still trembling. My voice was low, controlled, but filled with a heat I could barely contain. "You tied a blind child to a tree." Karen rolled her eyes dramatically. She was touching HOA property. "Kids ruin things. I'm preventing damage." "She was feeling the bark," I said. "She wasn't hurting anything." Karen shrugged like it didn't matter. "That's what you think. I've seen what kids do. They scrape, pick, break branches." "She can't even see the branches," I snapped. Karen blinked but didn't apologize, didn't soften, didn't even pause. Instead, she stepped closer and pointed her finger at me. "You parents think your kids can do whatever they want. I'm the HOA president. I decide what's allowed." My daughter tugged gently at my arm. "Dad, what did I do wrong?" she whispered. "Nothing," I said, crouching down to hold her. "You didn't do anything wrong at all." She nodded slowly, trusting me even though her breathing was still uneven. Karen crossed her arms. "Look, I didn't hurt her. She wasn't crying. And I tied her gently, so stop acting like I committed a crime. That rope kept her from moving," I said. "She couldn't understand what you were doing. She couldn't even see you coming." Karen lifted her chin. "Well, maybe she should learn to stay out of places she doesn't belong. I've told you before, you need to supervise her better. Kids like her get into trouble." It was subtle, but I heard it. Kids like her. My daughter flinched at the sound of Karen's voice, and her little hand tightened around mine. "She wasn't in trouble," I said. "She was enjoying the afternoon." Karen shrugged again. as if the entire situation was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. "You're dramatic," she said. "She'll get over it." I stared at her. Hard. "You don't tie children to trees, ever." Karen folded her arms smugly. "I do when they break the rules." That was the moment everything shifted, because neighbors were beginning to gather, stepping onto porches, peeking from behind fences, whispering as they looked at the rope still lying in the grass. They saw Karen. They saw my daughter. They saw the rope, and the murmurs began. "Did she tie her up? Is she serious?" "That's a child. She tied a blind child." Karen whipped her head toward them, furious. "Mind your own business. I'm enforcing the HOA bylaws." But the neighbors took another step closer. They weren't afraid of her anymore. My daughter tugged at me again, whispering, "Dad, why is everyone yelling? What did I do?" I kneeled down and held her face gently in my hands. "You did nothing," I said softly. "You were perfect. This wasn't your fault." She nodded slowly, trusting my voice, leaning into me for comfort. Then I stood up, rope in my hand, and faced Karen fully. "You crossed a line today," I said quietly. Karen scoffed. "Oh, please, stop being dramatic," but for the first time. She looked unsure. Her eyes flicked to the neighbors, to me, to my daughter, back to the rope. And something inside her started to crack. She just didn't know yet how bad it was about to get, because the girl she tied to that tree was the daughter of the police chief. And this was only the beginning. The rope slipped free from around my daughter's waist, and the moment it did, she reached out blindly until her hands found my arm. She grabbed onto me tightly, her small fingers trembling. I held her close, guiding her gently away from the tree so she could feel grounded again. "It's okay," I whispered softly. "You're safe now. I'm right here." She nodded, though the fear still clung to her breath. Behind us, Karen let out a loud, annoyed groan, as if she were the one being inconvenienced. "Oh, come on," she said dramatically. "She's fine. I didn't hurt her. I just made sure she stayed out of trouble." I stood up slowly, placing myself between Karen and my daughter. My jaw tightened. "You tied her to a tree," I said, keeping my voice calm but firm. "She's blind. She couldn't even see what you were doing." Karen flicked her hair over her shoulder like she was swatting away a fly. "Well, maybe she should learn to stay away from things that aren't hers," she snapped. My daughter tugged gently at my shirt. "Dad, I didn't touch anything," she said softly, voice shaking. "I was just feeling the tree." Her cane lay in the grass near the roots, the tip covered in dirt. She must have dropped it the moment Karen grabbed her. I looked at my daughter, then back at Karen. "You scared her," I said. "She scared me," Karen barked back. "She was on my grass, and I told you people 100 times that kids shouldn't be wandering around doing whatever they want." "It's our property," I replied calmly. "And the HOA doesn't have any rule that allows you to tie children to trees." Karen rolled her eyes in the most dramatic way possible. "Oh, please. You people exaggerate everything. I barely tied her. It was a gentle warning. She wasn't crying." My daughter flinched at Karen's voice, leaning closer into my side. "She was calling for help," I said. Karen waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, kids cry over everything. She'll forget this in 10 minutes. Honestly, I did you a favor. Now she knows not to touch things she shouldn't." A couple of neighbors peeked out from behind their curtains. Another pair stepped onto their porch. "Did she tie a child up?" someone whispered. "You've got to be kidding," another murmured. Karen spun around and yelled, "Mind your own business. I'm protecting the neighborhood rules. None of you follow them anyway." The neighbors didn't step back. They stepped closer, slowly, cautiously, drawn by the chaos they were witnessing. My daughter reached for my hand again, her voice small. "Dad, why is she yelling? What did I do wrong?" "You didn't do anything wrong," I assured her. "You were just touching the tree." Karen laughed sharply. "Oh, give me a break. The tree is HOA property, and she was messing with it. You all know kids damage things. I was stopping a problem before it happened." Mrs. Patel walked across the street, her face pale with shock. "Karen, you tied a blind little girl to a tree," she said. "Are you out of your mind?" Karen scoffed. "You don't get it, Patel. I'm the only one who cares about this neighborhood. If I don't enforce the rules, who will?" "You? Please." Another neighbor crossed her arms. "There's enforcing rules, and then there's this." Karen pointed the rope toward all of them like it was a magic wand. I tied her gently. The knot was loose. She could breathe, couldn't she? So stop pretending like I heard her. You restrained a child without permission, I said. You had no right. She was touching things, Karen shouted. You parents let your kids run wild. I'm keeping order. My daughter's voice trembled. Dad, can we go inside? Please. I don't like her yelling. We will soon, I whispered. I promise. Then I stood tall again, turning to Karen. You had no reason to touch her. She was doing nothing wrong. You don't discipline other people's children, ever. Karen let out a bitter laugh. Oh, right. Because you know better? Because you think your child is some angel? Kids like her get into trouble all the time. My eyes narrowed. Don't talk about her like that. Karen lifted her chin defiantly. I'll talk how I want. I'm the HOA president. I enforce the standards. No, I corrected her. You break them, neighbors murmured in agreement. A teenager from across the street called out, Karen, you tied up a child. Are you hearing yourself? Karen's face turned red. I didn't tie her up. I tied her to keep her safe, so she wouldn't move. So she'd learn. So she'd learn what? I asked. To be afraid of you? To fear the yard? To think she did something wrong when she didn't? Karen's mouth opened, but no words came out. For the first time, she looked unsure. Just for a second. But that second was enough. The neighbors had seen enough. My daughter had felt enough, and Karen had crossed the line, even if she didn't realize just how badly yet. She had no idea who she was dealing with. She had no idea whose child she had tied to that tree. The ropes on the ground were proof. The fear in my daughter's voice was proof, and the gathering crowd was proof. Karen had no idea that I wasn't just her neighbor. I was the police chief, and everything was about to change. The air in the neighborhood shifted the moment Karen raised her voice again. Her shouts didn't echo like before. They bounced off open doors, lit porches, and curious neighbors who had already heard enough to come outside. One porch light flicked on, then another, then another. In less than a minute, half the street was awake and watching. Mrs. Patel rushed across the lawn wrapped in her shawl. Mr. Reyes, still wearing work boots, jogged over with his hands on his hips. Teenagers appeared with their phones out, recording quietly from the sidewalk, and every single one of them took in the same unsettling scene. My blind, trembling daughter pressed against my side. The rope on the ground, Karen standing there with her chin raised proudly. What happened? Mrs. Patel gasped. Why is there a rope? Karen stepped forward before I could speak, pointing at the tree and then at my daughter. She was breaking HOA rules, she barked, and her father wasn't teaching her to stay away from unauthorized areas. I felt my daughter flinch at Karen's voice. Her small hands tightened around my arm again, seeking comfort in my presence. She wasn't doing anything wrong, I said, gently adjusting my daughter's cane into her hand. She was touching the tree. That's all, Karen scoffed loudly. You're just saying that because she's blind. The neighborhood fell silent. Every eye turned sharply toward Karen. Mrs. Patel's mouth dropped open. How dare you talk about a child like that? She said, stepping forward protectively. Karen ignored her completely. I'm the HOA president, she yelled, pointing proudly to her chest. I have the authority to enforce rules. And if parents don't control their kids, I will. Mr. Reyes frowned. You don't have the right to touch other people's children. Ever. Karen threw her hands in the air. She wasn't hurt. You people act like I attacked her. I tied her gently. She could breathe. The knot wasn't even tight. That's not the point, a teenager muttered loudly. But Karen was on a roll, and the more she talked, the deeper she dug herself. This whole neighborhood is out of control, she snapped. I'm the only one trying to keep order, and this kid, she pointed directly at my daughter, was doing something she wasn't supposed to. My daughter's voice, tiny and shaking, floated into the air. I didn't do anything wrong, she whispered. Karen rolled her eyes dramatically. You people always make excuses. I tried to teach her a lesson. She could have undone the knot any time. She wasn't trapped. She can't see the knot, I said sharply. She can't even see you. Karen blinked but didn't apologize, didn't even soften. Well, that's not my fault, she said. She should listen better. The crowd gasped again. Mrs. Patel stepped right up to Karen. You tied up a blind child and you're blaming her? Karen turned red. You all need to mind your own business. I run this neighborhood. Not you, not him. She jabbed a finger toward me. Oh, really? I said quietly. Karen scoffed. What? What are you gonna do? File an HOA complaint? Fine me? Oh, please. She crossed her arms smugly. You don't scare me. None of you do, the neighbors murmured. Phones kept recording. And slowly, deliberately, I reached into my jacket. Karen rolled her eyes dramatically. Oh, perfect, she mocked. What now? A fake report? A printed rulebook? You people are so predictable. But I didn't pull out a rulebook. I didn't pull out paperwork. I pulled out something that made the entire crowd go silent. My police badge. Karen froze, completely. Her face drained of color. Her arm dropped to her side. Her eyes widened like she'd seen a ghost. You're with the police? She whispered. I stepped forward, holding the badge where she couldn't ignore it. I'm not just with the police, I said calmly. I'm the police chief. A collective gasp rolled through the neighborhood. Oh no, Karen muttered, swaying slightly. Oh yes, Mrs. Patel whispered behind me with satisfaction. Karen stepped back, shaking her head. No, she said, voice trembling. If I knew that, if someone told me, if you just said, you shouldn't need to know who her father is, I said quietly. She's a child. That's all that should matter. Karen looked at my daughter, small, trembling, blind, clinging to my side, and for the first time, her bravado cracked. But it was far too late. The witnesses were here. The videos were rolling. The truth was out. And Karen was finally realizing she hadn't tied up just any child. She tied up the police chief's child. And every neighbor now knew exactly what she had done. Karen stumbled backward like the ground itself was tilting beneath her feet. Her confidence, the loud, overpowering kind she used to control the entire neighborhood, was crumbling faster than the rope she dropped onto the grass. I didn't know, she cried, her voice shaking. If I knew she was your daughter, I wouldn't have... I stepped closer, my badge still visible in my hand. You shouldn't need to know who she belongs to, I said quietly. She's a child. Karen swallowed hard, her eyes darting from me to my daughter. My daughter held my hand with her small fingers, still trembling, still frightened, but safe. Karen's gaze wavered, and she tried to form words. I didn't hurt her, she insisted, her voice cracking. Please, she wasn't crying. It was gentle, very gentle. She was calling for help, I replied. A few neighbors nodded. She sounded terrified, Mr. Reyes said. You traumatized that poor girl, Mrs. Patel added. Karen threw her hands up. You're all lying, she screamed. This isn't fair. I've done nothing but protect this neighborhood for years. I keep everyone safe. I make everything better. No, Mrs. Patel said firmly. You keep everyone scared. Karen's breathing became fast, almost frantic, like she was realizing the neighborhood she controlled through fear wasn't behind her anymore. Not today. Karen suddenly bent down, grabbed the rope from the ground, and held it up like it was some kind of innocent explanation. Look, she yelled. I tied it softly. The knot was friendly. Friendly, a teenager snorted. Friendly? What does that even mean? Karen ignored him and continued waving the rope like a banner. See? It's soft rope. It didn't even leave a mark. I didn't hurt anyone. I didn't do anything wrong. That's not the point, I said. You restrained a child without permission, a blind child. Another wave of murmurs rippled through the neighbors. Karen's eyes went wide, and she began shaking her head so fast her hair whipped around her face. No, she cried. I didn't restrain her. I was trying to help. She was wandering. And there are rules. There are always rules. And you think the rules justify tying a kid to a tree? Someone called out. Karen's face twisted. I was preventing damage, she snapped. The tree is valuable HOA property. Kids ruin things. They scratch, they break branches. She wasn't breaking anything, I said. She was feeling the bark. Karen jabbed a finger toward my daughter. She was touching property that doesn't belong to her. My daughter flinched at the sound of her voice. The cane in her hand rattled slightly. I stepped in front of her again, shielding her. Karen's voice softened suddenly, almost pathetically. I didn't mean it, she whispered. You know I didn't. I was just trying to keep order. I was doing my job. I didn't think it would go this far. Mrs. Patel folded her arms. You tied a little girl to a tree, she said plainly. No rule gives you the right to do that. Karen looked at each neighbor, searching desperately for someone, anyone, to defend her. Her face twisted as panic crept in. All of you are against me, she said, her voice breaking. All of you, after everything I've done, all the meetings, all the inspections, all the hard work I put into keeping this place perfect. Mr. Reyes frowned. Perfect for who? Not for us. Yes, someone else muttered. You treat us like children. You yell for everything, another added. Karen shook her head violently. No, you're twisting this. I help this neighborhood. Without me, everything falls apart. The rules exist for a reason. I looked at her steadily. Rules don't allow you to touch kids, and definitely not to tie one up. Karen pressed the rope to her chest like she was hugging it, her eyes glassy with fear. I didn't know she was blind, she whispered. You didn't give her the chance to tell you, Mrs. Patel replied. You didn't even let her speak. Karen's lip trembled. She shouldn't have been touching anything. I was trying to protect the HOA property. The HOA doesn't own my daughter, I said. That sentence stopped Karen cold. The neighbors fell silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. Karen blinked rapidly as if the truth finally hit her, as if the rope in her hands suddenly felt heavier, like the evidence it truly was. She whispered, barely audible. I didn't think it would end like this. Her shoulders sagged, her hands shook, her knees wobbled slightly. Because this wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't an overreaction. This wasn't a warning she could ignore. This was something she couldn't undo. She had tied a child, a blind child, to a tree, and she had done it in front of the entire neighborhood. Karen took one shaky step backward, but there was nowhere left to go, because the truth was out. The neighbors had seen everything. My badge was in my hand. My daughter was at my side, and the distant, faint sound of approaching police sirens began to echo through the neighborhood. Karen's breath hitched. She looked around wildly, at the neighbors, at me, at the rope. But it was too late. She wasn't the one in control anymore. The sirens grew louder, echoing down the neighborhood street like rolling thunder. Karen's breaths became short and panicked. Her hands shook at her sides, and her bright red jacket looked suddenly too loud for someone trying to disappear. 2 patrol cars rounded the corner, lights flashing across lawns and windows, turning the quiet houses into a scene glowing with red and blue. Slowly, the cars eased to a stop right in front of our house. My daughter squeezed my hand tighter. Dad, is everything okay? She whispered. Yes, I said softly. You're safe. I'm right here. The car doors opened. Officer Ramirez stepped out first, tall, calm, steady, followed by Officer Lee, who scanned the area with sharp eyes. They both recognized me immediately. Chief, Ramirez called, we received multiple 911 calls about an assault. He didn't look confused. He looked concerned. Karen's expression flipped instantly. Her panic morphed into fake relief as she ran toward the officers. Oh, thank goodness you're here, she cried dramatically. These people are lying about me. I was helping the neighborhood. That child was damaging HOA property. Officer Ramirez looked at her like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Ma'am, he said slowly, we got calls that you tied a child to a tree. Karen gasped as if insulted. No, I tied her gently. It wasn't even a real knot. I was teaching her a lesson. She was grabbing things she shouldn't. Officer Lee frowned deeply. That's not how lessons work. Karen pointed at me desperately. He knows I didn't mean anything. Right? Tell them I was just enforcing rules. I shifted slightly so she could see my badge still clipped to my belt. You tied my daughter to a tree, I said. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was simply the truth. Karen's arms dropped. Her face paled. I didn't know, she whispered. I didn't think it would get this far. Mrs. Patel stepped forward. You tied a blind child, she said. There's no excuse for that. Karen spun toward her. She was touching the tree. HOA property. I was protecting the neighborhood. Mr. Reyes scoffed. You don't protect this neighborhood. You scare it. Karen's eyes darted between every neighbor, searching for someone, anyone, to defend her. But all she saw were faces exhausted from months, even years, of her bullying. Officer Ramirez approached her slowly. "Ma'am, we need you to calm down," he said. "We have to ask a few questions." Karen backed away instantly. No, you can't question me. I'm the HOA president." Officer Lee raised an eyebrow. "That title isn't legal authority. It's not even official law enforcement." Karen shook her head wildly. "You don't understand. Everything I do is for the neighborhood. I make sure the rules are followed. Without me, people will start leaving trash everywhere. Kids will run wild. The grass will be uneven." Ramirez nodded slowly, unimpressed. "And tying an 8-year-old to a tree is part of that plan?" Karen's face went stiff. Her mouth opened. No sound came out. She looked at the rope still at her feet. The rope she had insisted was friendly. It wasn't friendly now, it was evidence. She whispered, "I was trying to help." My daughter pressed into my leg and I placed a hand gently on her back. "You frightened her," I said. "You took away her safety. She didn't even know what you were doing. She couldn't see it. She just felt your hands tying her down." Karen's breathing sped up. I didn't think. "That's the problem," Mrs. Patel said. Ramirez exhaled. "Ma'am, we need to take a statement," he said. Karen backed up again, voice cracking into hysteria. No, please, you can't arrest me. I didn't hurt anyone. I'm the HOA president. AOA president." Officer Lee approached her gently but firmly. "Ma'am, please turn around." Karen's legs wobbled. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I didn't think it would end like this." Neighbors watched silently. Some hugged their kids closer. Some shook their heads. Some filmed, but most simply stood in disbelief. Officer Ramirez guided Karen toward the patrol car, supporting her when she stumbled. She wasn't fighting anymore. The shock had drained the energy out of her. Still, she kept whispering, "I didn't mean it. I was trying to help. I didn't think." But the car door opened, and Karen realized there was no talking her way out of this. "No," she cried. "Please, someone defend me, say something, say anything." But the neighborhood remained quiet. Every person she had yelled at, every person she fined, every parent she had embarrassed, every kid she'd frightened, all stood there watching her consequences unfold. No one stepped forward, no one defended her. The officers helped her into the back seat. The door closed with a soft but final click. The flashing lights reflected off the houses, the trees, the rope on the ground. And then the sirens faded as the car pulled away. The neighborhood fell into a heavy, peaceful silence. My daughter tugged at my sleeve. "Dad, is she gone?" she whispered. "Yes," I said, kneeling beside her. "She won't hurt you again." She wrapped her arms around my neck, and I held her tightly, feeling her tiny heartbeat slow down against my shoulder. Around us, neighbors slowly drifted back to their homes. The night sky regained its calm. The tree rustled softly again in the wind. And for the first time in a long time, the neighborhood felt safe. The patrol cars disappeared around the corner, and the flashing lights faded into the night. For the first time in hours, the neighborhood was completely silent. No shouting, no commands, no threats. Just the soft rustling of leaves and the distant hum of crickets. I picked up my daughter gently, careful not to startle her. She wrapped her arms around my neck, her cheek resting against my shoulder. Her breathing was still a little shaky, but she was calmer now, trusting that everything dangerous had passed. My wife opened the front door, worry written all over her face. She rushed toward us. "Oh, thank God," she whispered, running her hand over our daughter's hair. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" My daughter nodded slowly. "I'm okay now. Dad came." I carried her inside. The warm light of the living room wrapped around us like a blanket. It felt safe, a sharp contrast to the cold fear that had filled the yard moments before. I sat down on the couch with her still in my arms. She clung to my shirt, her tiny fingers curling into the fabric. "Dad?" she whispered carefully. "Did I do something wrong?" My heart broke a little. I hugged her tightly. "No, sweetheart. You did nothing wrong. You were perfect." She lifted her head slightly, her unseeing eyes searching the air for my voice. "But she said I broke rules." "You didn't break anything," I said softly. "She was wrong. She shouldn't have touched you." My wife wrapped a blanket around her, smoothing it over her shoulders. Our daughter's little white cane lay beside the couch, still dusty from the ground. "She won't hurt you again," my wife said gently. A soft knock came at the door. I stood up carefully, laying my daughter on a pillow beside my wife. When I opened the door, Mrs. Patel stood there with a warm bowl of soup wrapped in a towel. "We brought something," she said softly. "She must be exhausted." Behind her, more neighbors appeared, quietly, respectfully, each carrying something small: a warm blanket, a cup of tea, a stuffed animal for my daughter, a plate of cookies, a bag of groceries, a simple handwritten note. "We're so glad she's safe," one neighbor said. "You're not alone," another added. "We're here for your family," Mrs. Bennett whispered. For the first time in years, the neighborhood felt united, not out of fear, but out of care. I thanked them all, one by one, as they placed the items gently on the table. They didn't stay long. They didn't gossip. They didn't pry. They simply offered kindness, support, and presence. When I returned to the couch, my daughter reached for my hand immediately. "Dad? Who is at the door?" she asked. "Friends," I said. "People who care about us." She smiled faintly. "That makes me feel better." She shifted closer, laying her head against me, letting out a small sigh of relief. The house felt warmer now, not because of the lights, but because of the peace. The tension that had filled our home for so long, every time Karen walked by with her clipboard and her glare, was finally gone. And you could feel it, the absence of her anger, her constant spying, her endless rules, like a weight lifted off everyone's shoulders. My daughter whispered again, "Dad, is the lady gone?" "Yes," I said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "She won't bother you again." She nodded, satisfied. "Good. I didn't like her yelling. It scared me." "I know," I said, "but it's over now." My wife sat beside us, resting her head on my shoulder. We all sat together quietly, the kind of silence that heals instead of hurts. Outside, porch lights turned off. Neighbors drifted back into their homes. The night returned to its gentle rhythm. Our daughter's breathing slowed as she drifted off to sleep, still holding my hand lightly. Her tiny fingers twitched, then relaxed. I watched her for a long moment, so small, so brave, so undeserving of what happened. I kissed her forehead softly. "Dad?" she murmured sleepily. "Yes, sweetheart. Thank you for coming." I felt a lump in my throat. "I'll always come," I whispered, "no matter where you are." Her grip on my hand loosened, and she fell completely asleep, peaceful at last. The living room was calm, the house felt safe, and for the first time in a long time, I felt the neighborhood breathe. Karen's reign was over, her shouting was gone, her rules were gone, her fear was gone, and this time everyone knew why. Because Karen tied the wrong child, because the girl she tied to that tree was the daughter of the police chief. And justice, real honest justice, always finds its way back home.